Have you tasted nihilism? Designer drug sweep through my neighborhoods like the flu. Evolution is constant. Each new pharmaceutical iteration tests its mettle with the delicious mortality of tragic idiots. Evolution seeks perfection. This time, I suspect, they may have gotten things right. I've been a beat cop in the shitty neighborhood of Carbondale, Illinois for 19 years, 13 days. At a certain point, you need to quantify things to make sure pieces of yourself don't get lost. Or at the very least, you count the days to keep track of how quickly you're dying. But nihilism moved too quickly to keep track. 3 days ago, I was called in for a wellness check at a sad apartment building. It was overcast. It was unlocked. A swarm of flies burst from the room as soon as I opened the door. The stench followed it. It was not an overpowering smell, but it spoke of neglect and cat food. I walked into the living room and announced myself. Almost immediately, I saw the bare legs poking out from around the kitchen corner, and I drew my gun. No matter how many bodies I found over the years, it never gets easier. I radioed for backup, then crept around the corner with my service weapon drawn. Inch by inch, the body came into view. The legs were gray. There was no way to tell the ethnicity or gender. Blue veins were visible beneath the translucent skin. The buttocks emerged next. I realized that the person must have been there for some time before death, because their ass was rifled with fecal matter. What appeared to be a water stain lay beneath their pelvis. It turned out to be the result of a urine saturation. Approximately 3 gallons had been absorbed into the floor. God knows how long that took. The flies had been centered around the excess feces, which covered much of the floor in addition to coating the buttocks. I had to walk through the swarm in order to reach the victim's head. I nearly slipped in the liquid shit that I couldn't see through the flies. I later threw those shoes in the trash. The floor actually got worse the more I saw of it. Huge swaths were black with slick mold. I nearly fell once again and steadied myself by grabbing the counter. My hand landed in goo. It was far too warm for an abandoned house. I didn't want to know what it was, so I shook my hand dry and didn't look at it. Creeping along the body, I was able to look into the victim's upper torso and arms, or what was left of them. The arm was festering, open wound. The ground mold had crept along its gray skin and spilled into the gash. It was impossible to tell how much skin was missing. Contrasting with the black mold was a cornucopia of blossoming white pus. Up and down his arm was a garden of slick putrescence. It seemed to battle the mold for space. Growing on the victim's gray back was a furry substance that took me several seconds to identify as moss. Heart pumping and stomach churning, I bent down to look at the corpse's face. Its pale blue eyes were almost white. They were wide-eyed and staring. The hair was brittle and thin, but I did not think I was witnessing the effects of male-pattern baldness. The mouth was open, and the lips were floating in a stagnant pit of drool. All of its teeth, except for one upper incisor, were gone. Then, it grabbed my leg. I turned to run, slipped into liquid horror, and cracked my skull on the counter. I landed face first on the unholy floor. Mold and shit and flies soaked into my open, festering wound. I screamed, stood up too fast, and face planted onto the dirty ass crack. I was finally able to get myself and run, sobbing into the corner of the room. Just as backup burst through the door, I was disoriented, injured, bleeding, hysterical, and crying. One of the cops reached over to the deadbeat's table and grabbed a bottle. He quickly removed one of the pills and popped it into my mouth. Nihilism. The guy on the floor had been in the same spot for God knows how long. The drug erased everything in his mind, and he was content simply lying flat without any movement as long as he was high. No matter how much mold or pus or living things swarmed his body. And I get it. The pill that cop gave me took everything away. I simply didn't give a shit about anything bad or good after that. I got out of the hospital last week. I haven't gone back to work since coming home, and I don't care. I got some of the nihilism. It's beyond power and wonder. It is all I want. This message will serve as a reminder that I lived. Now, I'm going to grab 7 bottles of pills, and I'm going to find a spot on the floor.